Today on In the Wood Yard, we're going to look at some logs. It's a road trip. Here we go. So Keith and I went on a road trip to go look at some logs. We had a really nice time. We looked at a lot of land. There's some beautiful, beautiful timber on this property. His cousin's land here is where we're looking, and it adjoins another property that is hundreds of acres, and they have been doing pretty darn good forest management, taking out the weeds over the years. And you can see by looking at these trees here, a lot of really, really nice, straight, limbless timber, all different kinds. There's ash, white ash, black ash, there's cherry, hard maple, oak, no white oak, just red oak primarily, but some real beautiful stuff. And they've got roads throughout, so you got good access. It's a very kind of hilly, a lot of rocky kind of forest floor there, rocks all over the place. I believe this is kind of on the edge of where the glaciers came through, so there's a lot of deposits of glacial rocks and hills there. So really, really nice, pretty property. A lot of deer sign. There was deer tracks everywhere. So yeah, they manage the forest pretty well, and you can see by looking, it's been thinned out over the years, and they just keep harvesting the junk out and making it so that it's better all the time. So we're coming up on a spot here where a tree dropped across the road, and we've got to do a little brush clearing so we can get by, and then we'll get to the logs coming up real soon here. But really nice property, I tell you. So as we're riding along here, that's a pile of basswood, which is basically worthless at this point because it's a little over a year old. So probably like toilet paper, it's just going to be light as can be. And then he starts in with some of the piles here. Now, most of this in the piles is ash, and they're cutting it down because a lot of the ash is dying south of this area, and they want to get the ash that's good out as soon as they can. There's a lot of kind of not so good stuff in there too. So this is kind of the junk wood stuff they can't really make lumber out of. A lot of small stuff in here, but all the way down to 4 or 5 inches, all the way up to about 12-inch pieces. On the bottom you can see that orange stuff there, that is the cherry, but a lot of ash in there. As you can see, it's more ash than anything, probably 90% ash, which is nice wood. It's awesome. I mean, I really like it, but I really don't need ash. What I really need more of than anything is cherry and oak. There's some hard maple too. There's a few piles of hard maple here. Again, is ash and cherry. And this is done this way because this is all pulpwood stuff that was not good for lumber or bolts or for veneer logs. The good stuff's been taken out, but good firewood. And there's pile after pile. Here's some big, ugly, nasty. That's the rotten stuff. That's usually the free stuff there that Kenny gets. But man, they had just, by looking here, on both sides of the road as we drove for hundreds and hundreds of yards, there was piles of logs. And the hard thing is getting it out of there because it's pretty far back in. The guy that's giving us the tour, like I said, is Keith's cousin's husband, and they've got like 60 or 70 acres, if I remember correctly. And then behind it, there's like 600 acres of land that is owned by a lumber company. And that's where we are right now. It's actually the lumber company's land we're on, and those are the logs that they want to get rid of because they've been sitting there a while. I can't remember what this pile was here. Looks like ash, maybe a mix of stuff. Hard to tell looking at the screen here as I'm driving by. This is the back way they come in, and it's all washed out, so they can't really come in that back way anymore. They can't get because you can't really tell, but there's a pretty steep hill right here. So they're going to need to fix the road so they can come in from the back way. And so they got to go through Keith's cousin's land in order to get to their land. It's kind of landlocked. And this year they kind of ran out of luck because it warmed up and everything just turned to mush, so they really couldn't get in there. And then they put bans on all the roads, so they're kind of out of luck. Now, coming up here, this is their land that they have, and they're logging off a lot of the ash trees, as you can see here. They cut most everything to 200 inches because that's what they can use their skidder for to haul it out, and then they cut it down to 100 inches. And there's a pile coming up here real soon, I think, like right there it is. So you can see those are 200 inches right there, and then they cut them down to 100 inches because it's easier for them to get them out of the woods with their skidder, because they have a one bunk skidder and they can load them up and it works really good for them. So that's why they have it that way. I asked them about it because it was kind of weird. I saw that the logs were, long, and then they were cut down, and I couldn't figure out why. And then he explained it to me why. And it makes sense that that's just where it works good for them for their system. But yeah, it's pretty muddy in there, and they hauled a bunch of wood out of here already, I guess. And now they've just been coming in here kind of cleaning stuff up. Not really a clear cut. They kind of did a heavy select. So on one side you can see to the right there it's more opened up, and they got logs laying all through here. And a lot of ash trees is what they've got. Ash all over the place. Ash up the ash. That's what they've got. And the guy that was logging it took off and just kind of left his equipment there. You can see how greasy it is in here. And this is kind of sandy country. When sandy country gets greasy, it's bad. So yeah, that's why they're unable to really get in there and do much work. There you can see one of their skidders right there. It's a single bunk, and that's the one they use for hauling stuff out. We're coming back around now. Oh, that's not a single bunk. That's just a skidder that they use for pulling logs out, looks like. And you can see we're in here in February. There should be 2-3 feet of snow. There's none. It's mud. So it was really a bad year for loggers everywhere in the state of Wisconsin for getting work done. And a lot of them have contracts, and they're kind of out of luck because they can't get in there and get the wood. So, but beautiful, beautiful timber, lots of nice logs. Kind of hard to get to though because they're so far off the road, and we're thinking about it. So that was kind of a cool trip. We have returned to the woodyard. The trip we just went on is about an hour away from here. We're in Appleton area, Wisconsin. If you're not looking at a map to know where we are now, where we're located. And we went up past Tigerton, kind of in northern Wisconsin, kind of where the woodlands area starts. Once you get up in that area, less farms, more timber, more woods. And the property that we looked at was a relative of Keith's, that's Bert's dad. And it's his cousin, and they own like 60 acres of woods in that one area we looked at. And he has some wood there that he wants to sell, but mainly the reason we went is the property behind him that's owned by a lumber company owns all that land. There's like 600 some acres there, and they had logged all those logs that you saw sitting there alongside of the logging roads. They logged out last year. So that wood's been sitting there for like a year, and they want to sell it. Apparently it's not good for what they want it for. It's not big enough for bolts. It's not big enough for lumber. It's not big enough for veneer. It's kind of the leftover stuff, which is normally what a lot of firewood people get. So there was some oak, which I am interested in. I don't really need any oak. I've got 2 piles right behind me here. They do have a bunch of cherry, but the cherry was mixed in with the ash. If you guys saw that in the piles there, there was a lot of cherry, but it wasn't separated, and it should have been separated because cherry is kind of that's what I want, and I think there's other people that want cherry. But to mix the ash in with it, or the ash in with the cherry, however you look at it, there's ash everywhere, and I really don't need ash because ash is dying everywhere, and they're trying to log it off before it dies off so they can sell their logs and stuff for timber and for lumber. That's what they're trying to do, trying to get at it and get rid of it before it dies, which makes sense. But that wood's been sitting there a year. The only reason it would make sense for me to buy it is, number one, if I can get a good deal on it, and if I can get it trucked here cheap enough. Now, what we're thinking of doing is possibly doing a convoy, taking my truck, Bert's truck, Adam's truck with the trailers, going up there and hauling back some loads. It's an hour away, so there's that. And I don't know if there's a big enough amount there that we could hire a truck driver to load it and bring it back. And I really don't want to just buy all of it. I really just want the oak, and I really just want the cherry. But the cherry's all mixed in with the ash, so to pull all that out, it's kind of just going to be a mess trying to do that. And I don't know if they're going to want to do that. I don't know what the price is that they want on it, what they're willing to sell it for. If we can get it cheap enough, it would make sense. But other than that, I'm not really sure because I don't need the wood right now. But the reason it makes sense to buy it right now is if I can get a good deal on it, and I can have wood in advance, sitting here, drying in log form. There's a guy that I've watched his channel a couple times. I think he's in Australia or New Zealand. He buys 5 years in advance. He buys logs every year. He buys the quantity that he thinks he's going to need or replacement for that year's pile of wood that they're going to run, however many truckloads that is, and then he just keeps replacing it. But the thing about doing that is you have to have the space to do it, and you have to have the coin to buy inventory to sit on it. So that's a lot of stock that's just sitting there. But the benefit is for him is he buys the logs. They sit out in the open, in the field, in the sun, in the wind, drying for 5 years. So when he cuts it and splits it, it's good to go. There's no air drying time for split pieces. There's no handling it in between. There's no kilns needed. All they do is they process it directly into the trailers, deliver it. Kind of a good way to do it when you think of it. But you have a lot of inventory sitting there to do it that way. That would be a nice thing to do, though, is to dry it ahead of time. Because with a processor, it doesn't matter. If it's dry, it's still going to split. If you're doing it by hand, maybe not so much, or if you're splitting it with just a small splitter, as your wood dries, what happens is it shrinks down and tightens up. And when that happens, it gets harder to split. That's why you want to split wood when it's wet. Green is when it's the easiest. It cuts the easiest, splits the easiest. So there's that. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m. You're going to be back at 5:30 a.m. But right now, the best thing you can probably do is just go watch more videos. There's 1,300 videos on my channel. You should watch them all right now. Good night, Irene.